Hello everyone, it's me, Pixie People. Obviously, you're gonna hear a lot of blood and guts. Don't worry, it was entailed in my username, where pigs are eating people. Well, let's get right into it, shall we? So we continue our story right off where we left off. Deku just Deku just won the sports festival, and they're about to go camping. And they get on the bus. Todoroki says, "Sexy Deku." They have a nice talk until the bus stops randomly. They get off. Then the terrain just collapses. Then they fall off. And then basically Deku just blitzes all the stone monsters, annihilating all of them. Especially once he gets into maximum overdrive, the white-haired state. And he just kept blitzing through all the stone statues, so everyone was just able to blast through. And they actually got there before the bus did, because of Deku's sonic speed. And, they did it. And, after a while, the bus gets there, and they're already settled down. And they're already having their meal. And they're already explained that this will be their only cooked meal that isn't made by them. So, let's just get right in. And then Deku finally meets Koda. He walks up to Koda, about to give him a handshake. Kid goes for his nads, quote unquote. He hits them, and he bruises his hand. Because, sadly, no balls. And so, Koda runs away with a bruised hand. And Deku just walks off, confused. Also a bit concerned how the kid just went for his nads. And then he thinks about a time where he could have had his legs. That would have hurt a lot. But he won't think about that. He's fine. He'll be fine. And so he just sits at the Togoroki, and they talk for the rest of the time. Usually about how what how was the kid? And they just kept spiraling into that. Then it bounced off into Todoroki's quirk. Then it bounced off on how what is Deku's powers, until it was the next day. Yeah, they were talking when they were supposed to be sleeping. Luckily, they still got a good night's sleep. Yeah, I'm very lucky. Obviously, Deku is able to just sit out. He just sits next to Todoroki, though, outside of his range, of course, and yells towards him every single time he makes an improvement. And that's basically his training. It's observing even the slightest details to a person's power set, changing or changing or evolving, one could say. And yeah, but I would say Deku would be. Well, they just keep doing that until it's night. Well, obviously, then they cook their curry. They have that, but Deku doesn't eat any because can't eat. But then he remembers that that kid. He doesn't know his name's Koda because in this timeline he didn't really go into the bathing area. He just needs a hose to his face. He can't really feel the cold. Basically, you just spray him with a high pressure water hose and then it just comes off. You don't really need him to bathe in some warm water so his body doesn't feel in pain from high pressure power washers going across his face and eyeball. So, yeah, he doesn't really know who Cody is, but he knows that kid probably is somewhere. So he asks the cat ladies and man, I think, where he could be. And then they point towards that mountain, and then Deku just runs off. They're like confused until they see Deku grab a bowl of the curry, and then they know. Then Deku gets there and sees Koda just sitting there. He places the curry on the next to him and sits right next to him, seeing if he'll take the bait. And yes, Koda does take the bait. And then they talk for a bit on on why he keeps trying to be his friend, or who is he. These are all Koda's, by the way. All Koda's questions. And eventually Deku just says his name, who he is, how he's a robot, and how he's a cyborg. And then then shows a bit of detail on how he grew up as a with his uh, with his aunt, and then he fully understands what happened. Deku is just that perceptive. If this kid hates heroes so much, probably his parents were heroes. Maybe they abandoned him. Oh, wait, no, his aunt is the cat lady. Yeah, they died in battle. Deku's a pretty persistent guy, so he knows. But he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to up and say it to him. But Koda knows as well. He knows that Deku knows. And they just sit there in silence after a while. Then Koda finally picks up the curry and eats it. And Deku, you can't say it, but he smiles on the inside. Well, that is until a giant fist just comes careening into Deku's face, denting it, and then slamming him into a wall. But Deku just immediately fires right out of it and kicks whatever hit him away from Koda. Turns out it's muscular, of course. Then him on his peetish in starts telling him that he killed that kid's family and he's going to enjoy in feel like heaven's gates are shining its lights upon me if I'm able to kill this kid. So, yeah, a bit of a pedophile. You can't tell me otherwise. Well, you can, but I'm not gonna listen. But, yeah. And Deku, just not wanting to sense his penal crap, uh, charges up his fist, slams it into Muscular's chest, and just implodes it. Just exploding Muscular's heart. Pretty anticlimactic battle, you're thinking. Well, he got a cheap shot off, and Deku's faster than Muscular can see. So, done. And then Koda just says thank you, and Deku gives him a piggyback ride, and then they just blitz off. Right in front of Aizawa. Right before he actually steps out of the building. So all the students are still inside. So Deku puts Koda next to them, tells him to stay next to Koda, and then just blitzes outside and then actually hits the Twice clone in the shins, knocking it forward, and then sending fire to the ground. Then Deku pushing off the ground, grabbing Aizawa, spinning in the air. The fire, shoots off it, and then the Dobby clone goes flying in the air. And then Deku just kicks its head off. Well, obviously, it's not its real head, but its very goopy head slams against a tree, turning into mud, basically. And then Aizawa is gently placed down because Deku just slammed his foot into the freaking uh, wall and placed him down, and then tore his foot out, and then just said he's gonna go find Baku on the others. Oh yeah, and then he just starts blitzing around. Then he actually, then he shines a beam of light straight towards this massive force of destruction. He definitely assumes it's just Tokiyami, and that chills him out because that beam just struck straight onto a tree. Luckily, this tree was not connected to any of the other trees, so just a cadet's fire. So Tokiyami just sits there while Dark Shadow collects sticks, setting a stick on fire and then setting a fire, and then they both sit there. in in peace. And then Deku moves around, keeps lifting around, then finds Bakugo and Todoroki running from Mr. Compress. Mr. Compress is about to touch Bakugo, but Deku grabs his hand, breaking it, and then slamming his freaking metal elbow into his face, rubbing it in as well, and then grabbing Compress by its throat, and then just body slamming him against the tree, breaking the tree in the process. But luckily, the real Dobby shows up and actually gets his flame thing on Deku. But Deku ran too far, actually, to the floor where it would actually be difficult to run back. So he turns around, runs faster than he usually does. But sadly, that doesn't help because Todoroki's fighting Dobby and Baku's nowhere in sight. And Deku just immediately tackles Dobby through probably like 100 trees. That's really far away, by the way. And slams him into another tree, knocking him out. He doesn't even consider him a threat anymore and just starts jumping through the trees, finding Compress and shooting towards him like freaking Endeavor when he was fighting that High Nomu and where he got his face cut off. But Compress keeps swooving him. Eventually, he's able to get to Spinner and Magna Girl, and then they both just heave him through a portal while they jump through it as well. Then we see Dobby teleport through this portal. Toga also heading through the portal. The turn is behind her. And so Deku then was. By the way, Deku in all of this was blitzing straight for the freaking portal, but it closed right as he was there. And so his fingertips are torn off, and he slams into the ground, basically making a giant dust cloud. And then he yells with all of his robot fury. And then immediately, doesn't even consider anyone's suggestions, blitzes towards the city. He gets there really quickly, by the way. Like faster than like a like a bullet train. Yeah, he's faster than a bullet train. Obviously, Superman being faster than a bullet train makes total sense. He can spin the world. He can spin the world until it goes to the future or back in time. So I think Deku can run as fast as a bullet train. Gets there, and then immediately just runs to the UA, opens up his locker, and takes out this giant suitcase. He takes the suitcase and then flies out to the city, looking around, and finally spotting this alley that looked awfully suspicious because there wasn't a lot of people next to it, but there was a whole lot of cops. So he flies down, slams into the ground, then sees that there actually are no cops in there. So he then looks around, then spots this bar, weirdly named LV. So he just assumes villains, because he's pretty belligerent. I'm kidding. He knows what he's doing. Also, they have a really stupid bar name. And Deku just, not even hesitating, opens up his briefcase, and then he becomes his horseman. Yeah, he becomes the centaur, right? That's the centaur, not a minotaur. Yeah, a centaur. It's a centaur. Then he just immediately uses his galloping power to freaking destroy the wall with like a donkey kick. Then using grapplers that come out of his tail, grabbing twice Toga and Compress and the Magnet Girl and Spinner at the same time, and then knocking their heads together. Not knocking all of them out, just Spinner and twice, because they have the weakest skull. One has a scar on it, and the other one's just stupid. And so the two girls are up and Compress. But he has a mask on, so his mask is shattered. But obviously, remember that mask he wore when they were fighting Overhaul, quote unquote. When they went to go take the correlation bullets and took off Overhaul's arms. That was a very wholesome moment, by the way. Not for overall, but for us, very therapeutic. But anyways, so Deku, well, then he shoots freaking basically key blast at Shigaraki and Dabi. Only Dabi gets hit, and Shigaraki gets saved by Korakiri, using a portal to hit Deku, but, Deku just absorbs into his body and then makes it into a bigger ball. Freaking hits it with a big bang attack, just obliterating Korakiri. Not obliterating him, but like exploding half of the door, like half of the bar. Well, that is until a bar explodes, and then Deku sees All Might uh, flying through the sky as well. Okay, let's just say for plot reasons, All Might was still doing his regular travels as a hero, and so then he saw the building explode, ran towards it, and that's how he's here. And so he grabs Deku and Baku out of the sky, because this is his students. He's not just gonna leave them to perish in an explosion. So he saves both of them. Actually, gets All Might. He actually freaking blitzes super far away before All for One can show up. But then he just felt the presence of All for One, and so he blitzes right back. But Deku just immediately picks up Baku, puts him on his back, and sprints away to UA. He gets to UA, and then tells Natsu to look out for Bakugo. Then he does. And of course, Deku then just removes the horse bits and makes it into a sword, just a massive anime sword, puts it on his back, and then just blitzes away. And then finally gets there while All Might is in his skinny form and is like charging up his final punch. Deku can tell it's his final punch because the bro is putting he looks menacing right now. So for this punch to land, he's hoping he cuts All for One in half and kicks his torso towards All Might, which All Might is very glad for. So he punches his fist, but All for One uses like a cannon on his backs to shoot himself forward and slam his fist into All Might's harder than what Deku was anticipating. But obviously, All Might hits him with the shrink arm, punch him in the face, and then says, "That's because I didn't put my back into it." And yells, "United States of Smash," and knocks All for One out. Obviously, Deku kicks back All for One's legs. They regenerate back onto him eventually. But that was like during the freaking. That was during when he was getting chained up, so they had to wait until his. They had to wait until his. They had to wait until he regenerated. But eventually he regenerated and they got him into prison. Good job, guys. Well, how are we doing on time? Okay. Well, uh, it's been Pigsy People. Have a great day or night. Love y'all. Like, subscribe, hit the post notification bell. Helps me all with my progress into YouTube. Bye bye.